Let's call this meeting to order. It looks like it's 5:31. And as Ulysses said, I will be doing my very best to chair us through the meeting this evening. And in the spirit of turnaround is fair play, I'd like to ask Ulysses, since he has the biggest flag in the room, to please lead us all through the Pledge of Allegiance. So if I could ask everyone to please mute your speakers and stand. And Ulysses, when you're ready, please lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you very much. And Ulysses, has the agenda been posted?
Yes, it has.
Wonderful. Nadia, good evening. Could you please have a roll call for us?
Commissioners Adams,
Present.
Breslin,
Present.
Budillo, Burke,
Present.
Corcoran and Dada excused, Feltman,
Here.
Freemuth,
Yeah.
Edric,
Here.
Hun,
Present.
Hughes, present, Martin, Miller,
Here.
Payne,
Present.
Philbrook,
Present.
By,
Here.
Schmitz,
Here.
Suero, Wheel.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. So before we move on to the next item, which is the acceptance of the agenda, this evening at the request of the city manager, we've made a slight change in the order of the agenda. So if you all may want to take a look at your agenda, I'm going to walk you through just a few items that are going to change. So on the agenda that you currently have, items 1 through 7, they're going to remain exactly the same as before. We're going to move item number 9, which is the discussion and action items from the previous agenda, up to number 8. And then within that, we're going to swap the order of those items. So 225 South El Cielo will be the first discussion item, and then we'll move on to Aviatrix Communications and the marketing plan. So that means this executive director report will now be number 9 on tonight's agenda. And then the items within that will follow in this order. 9A will be the marketing update. 9B will be the demonstration garden update. 9C will be the projects update. And 9D will be the financial summary update. Once again, that'll be the marketing update, the demonstration garden update, the projects update, and then the financial summary update. Are there any questions between that switch between 8 and 9? So with that noted, do I have a motion to accept the agenda with those changes?
So move.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
Wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Beautiful. Thank you very much. Okay, we've moved on quickly to public comments. Nadia, do we have any public comments this evening?
No, we do not.
Great. Thank you very much. So let's move on to,
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Burke.
Yes, sir.
Available, anybody who is on the Zoom call right now, the opportunity to speak as well.
Excuse me, certainly. Once again, anyone who is on the Zoom call this evening and would like to provide public comments. Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to the minutes of our September 22nd commission meeting. Are there any changes to those minutes? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Great, and a second.
Second.
Great, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful, thank you very much. Looks like we're moving on to the city manager's report. So with that, I see Justin smiling. I'll turn it right over to City Manager Justin Clifton.
Thank you very much, everyone. I don't have a whole lot to report this evening. I think primarily I wanted to follow up on Martha's operation, which was a commitment that we made going into this transition. So I just received a report from them and happy to report that at this point, year to date, or at least through September, they have seen 247 unduplicated individuals. From there, there's a breakdown of a lot of services rendered. And just to give you some context for that, they've had 284 shower services. They've issued 49 clothing vouchers. They're issuing bus passes to about 67 individuals. Case management work, 241. Number of housing plan developed, 78. Those that were already housed from the streets, 6. Birth certificates, ID vouchers, on and on and on. So I think what that really means is they're pretty much fully operational at this point, and seeing the kind of numbers that we were seeing for clients of Well in the Desert. I think what's really impressive to me is that from my own vantage point, and I drive the street numerous times a day. I live down El Cielo, about 1.5 miles from the airport. So I'm there in the morning and evening, and sometimes during the afternoon if I happen to go home for lunch. I don't see anything like the kind of secondary impact we saw at the old facility where Well in the Desert was operating near Bristow Park. So I think so far I'm considering this successful. I know that Martha's has worked very hard, knew very well the concerns that we had about the secondary impacts. Martha's is also operating the warming center church, where they've also seen more than 160 unduplicated individuals. Now, some of those might be the same that have received services at the Access Center, so you can't necessarily add those numbers together because they're separate facilities, but they've housed some people through that program as well. So I see that they're having success. Both locations have had very few, if any, complaints. We still have plenty of issues with unhoused individuals in other areas of town, and some of those might be the same receiving services, but I'm not seeing the kind of impacts that we were mostly concerned about. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just also identify one point in this discussion, because it's part of the city manager's report. It's also item 8A on tonight's agenda, which is 225 South El Cielo. So therefore, discussion can be had by the commissioners on this item. Just want to clarify. Also, from the airport's perspective, we've had 3 contacts with individuals in the last 30 days from the last commission meeting that we had. None of those can be directly tied to services that are provided by Martha's Kitchen or for Martha's Village. And these are very comparable to the numbers that we've had prior to the services being offered there at the Access Center.
So any incidents at the parking lot?
No, sir. Contacts that we've had have been walking in and around the ground transportation center. One individual was out at the in the car rental lot, and one came inside the terminal. But again, very typical for even prior to the Access Center. Those type of contacts were generally routine.
And Ulysses, what does airport staff do with those types of contacts?
The initial contact may or may not be by a law enforcement officer. Sometimes it is or it's not. They'll try to determine what the purpose of the individual being on the airport property is, and ask them again if they're not here for normal businesses related to the airport operations, if they can move along, assuming that they're going to loiter or trespassing along that line, get them to cooperate with the request. If for some reason they don't, then escalation can lead to law enforcement being brought in, and then they take control of the situation and try to, again, encourage the individual to move along as opposed to apprehend them or retain them in any manner.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Do we have any further questions for Justin on LC on 225 LCLO?
So
Okay.
if it's okay with the chair, I apologize to duck out early. We do have 3 commission meetings this evening. And I know that the Measure J Oversight Commission wanted to discuss some things with me, and then I'm going to try to make an appearance at the Arts Commission as well.
Nope, no, absolutely. It looks like we were able to move this around and accommodate you. We thank you very much for your time.
And thank you very much for accommodating the busy schedule. I really appreciate it. And thank you as always for your hard work. Thank you.
With pleasure. Okay, we are moving on to the item, excuse me, 8B. And this is Aviatrix Communications. This is our marketing and communications plan. And it's my pleasure to introduce, I see Katie right there in the corner. Katie Franco with Aviatrix Communications. The marketing committee has had the pleasure of listening to Katie's plan, and she's now going to present it to the full commission. And I'd like to say to the full commission that this is an abbreviated plan, and for competitive reasons, we're not sharing the entirety of this plan. One, we would be here for quite a while this evening. But those who do need to know it. And that's Daniel, and that's the staff at the airport. And those are the folks who are going to be implementing this plan. So we're happy to answer those questions. And Daniel can answer those questions, certainly one-on-one. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Katie to talk through the highlights of this plan, and certainly to be available to answer any questions from the commission. So Katie, over to you.
Thanks, Todd. I am going to share my screen. I have a quick presentation that shows the overview of what we went through to get the plan in place, and a sampling of the items that are in the plan. Please give me a little wave if you can confirm you're seeing my actual screen and not all the proper back-end PowerPoints. Thank you. You never can tell with Zoom, and I appreciate the vote of confidence there. But so a quick look at what I'd like to go over today is just what's in the plan, how we got here, and what the major elements of the plan contain. So a communications plan in general is a comprehensive look at all the communications initiatives that a company is doing or would like to do, and then develops that strategy to launch them, to include the key messages, the goals, the ways to measure success, estimated costs, and a timeline for aligning all of these ideas, existing and new, into one plan that you can move forward with together. It's important for the executives and the commissioners and leadership to know where their ship is moving toward, to be able to budget for bigger projects as they come up for the years 2 and 3 and beyond. And also gives clear direction to staff on what to be enacting next and in the same time frame. It is a roadmap, not set in stone, and so we encourage Daniel and the team to take this living, breathing document and to modify it when something isn't working, or to double down on something that is. So we will, these are several of the items that this plan does entail, and we encourage Daniel and the airport team to keep poking at it and to make sure that it's doing exactly what they want it to do. A little bit of the background to get us to the plan development. I'd like to thank each of you who were able to complete the study or to participate in one of our focus groups. That survey we sent out earlier this summer really helped us define what your airport is, what it wants to be, what the community thinks about it, and how we think we can get to the changing some of those minds and bringing in some current messaging. So the employee stakeholder reviews, the focus groups, and the community research have been really valuable into putting this plan into place. There are several different audiences in your market who need to stay informed about your airport. And so we broke them out into these groups. And that's the people who use your airport, those who live here who don't yet use your airport, general residents, internal stakeholders, employees, tenants, and such. The airlines need a specific message, and then regional stakeholders. So all of these teams need different messaging, and users need to be thanked for using their local airport. Non-users need to be aware that your airport's offerings, you've got lower prices than they might think. You've got more connections than they might think. You have more opportunities than they have had in the back of their mind since the 90s, and they need different messaging. Your regional stakeholders need to be kept informed of current initiatives so they can share that information with their constituents. And so we did in this plan break out each of those audiences by these different groups, a little bit of definition about who they are and their needs, and some key messages for how to interact with them. So making sure that resident non-users know that when you factor in the costs of driving, parking, staying the night before on an Ontario flight, or whatever it may be, Palm Springs is perhaps a more economical choice than you might have thought at first. So this plan does break down those audiences and the specific messages that they need to better understand your airport and its goals. Speaking of goals, these are the 4 long-term goals that we chose for the plan. The first one is regarding the airport brand and making sure that it is reflective of the entirety of the Coachella Valley as opposed to perhaps just Palm Springs. The second one is to increase the external communications channels so that your region is aware of the airport's economic impact, the current offerings, and the variety of ways the airport serves the community. The third goal for the plan is internal and making sure that those frontline employees and everyone involved in these projects stays current on the airport's plans, initiatives, and projects, and is able to share that information accurately and consistently with their friends, their family, and their neighbors. Finally, the fourth goal is about customers and users on the airport and making sure their user experience is as elevated as possible and one that they will continue to come back to time and time again. Under those 4 goals, we have broken out 10 objectives. These objectives tackle specific areas within those 4 goals. The first 2 being the branding, we've got a goal for internal communications, and then the goal at the end is for your on-airport users and passengers. So being able to break out those goals into larger sections enables us to tackle them more specifically in the next section, and that is the tactics and metrics. So if you see goal 3, objective 1, each objective has a series of tactics that we aim to implement in order to achieve the objective and ultimately the goal. These tactics are measurable, they are time-bound, they are meant to be smart goals or smart tools, and each specifically address an avenue or opportunity that Daniel and the communications team can implement in order to reach more of your audience or educate a larger group of community or elevate the airport customer experience. So we've offered a variety of opportunities here. Daniel is game for everything, which has been so much fun in order to think about all of the different ways that you can reach each member of the community in different ways, whether they never set foot on the airport or not. They will hear your messages, they will understand the value you bring, and they will have a different opportunity perhaps to interact with the airport than they ever have before. Finally, each of these objectives and tactics have metrics. Because this is the beginning of the plan and the beginning of many of these programs, the metrics that we've established in this plan are largely about implementation and launch. So we do encourage the airport team as these programs start and succeed and continue in a consistent manner that you can refine the metrics. So for example, the first metric here is to establish a quarterly newsletter and to measure your success by completing 5 newsletters by Q2 2023. So starting out with a consistent program, establishing that, who's building the content, how often they need pictures, all of those things. And then once you've established a successful program, you can refine those metrics to think about how many people read them each quarter. Are people contributing or suggesting ideas? Where are these messages going? Are you able to share them in other channels? So again, this is a living document, and while our metrics may be initial, we do encourage the airport to continue to refine them as these programs progress. After creating the goals, the objectives, the tactics, and the metrics, we went in and broke out each of those ideas into our communications mix. And this was several pages of everything that we had laid out, what it is, who would own it, or how it could be, who would own it when it was being done, the audience you're trying to reach with that, how often, if there's a frequency to it, if a cost is one time or annual, getting down the details of really thinking consistently about each of these items and how they might play out. And so in the plan, Daniel is assigned many, many, many tasks. Here, there are some items where we know that he'll be able to hand off some of these things. He wears many hats, but web developer isn't one of them. So there are items in here already addressed for consultant, but in general, Daniel would be managing these programs internally for the airport or via consultant. And then a breakdown of the costs and how often they might happen, and how often that consistency is also important for our next slide, because what we did was break out all of those communications efforts into a calendar, a timeline that builds everything out by quarter. And this helps the airport, as well as its executive team, understand what is happening when, and that helps everyone be able to budget for it, be able to budget time for it, be able to build backwards to put out the RFP to get the website developed, or whatever it may be. So a very comprehensive look at, in terms of time, what that program and programs are going to look like and how they relate to each other. Some of them, step one has to happen before step two. Some of them are independent, and some of them can be pushed off into subsequent fiscal years in order to accommodate and wait for a budget that would support them. Finally, the last thing we were able to do is take a look at Daniel's successes with the media plan. We worked with the budget that he had for this current fiscal year, the things he's been doing successfully, the things that we've seen other airports do, a breakdown of a mix. And again, your community is unique, and I think he's got a really good handle on where he's seeing his audiences, where they are receiving the messages, and how they are responding. But we were able to break down the remaining funds into an overall fiscal calendar to help with the advertising program. Again, these buckets are not set in stone. If something isn't working or a message needs to be bumped to October as opposed to September, you know, he certainly has the flexibility to do that. But we did think that a comprehensive look at the advertising that's going on was helpful for the staff as well as the executive team. That was the final section of our program, our plan here. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them or address them to Daniel. But thank you again for your participation in the early stages, and for your continued support as Daniel implements these many very fun and impactful plans.
Katie, thank you again. It was great to hear it once again for this wonderful overview. And I'd like to turn it over to my fellow commissioners for any questions.
Todd, I've got a question.
Yes.
I noticed that I was wondering, has there been any discussion in the plan in regards to the role the commissioners would play in the marketing and the city council? Because I didn't notice any of them as owners or as those types of things. And I think it's important that the elected and appointed officials are part of the plan. So that's a question I'd like to, where's that going?
I'll let Katie answer it, but it is in this little overview. It's one of my favorite parts of it. Katie went through it somewhat fast. Katie, is it like number 9 on on one of the objectives that you
Yes.
had.
Thank you. I am trying to share and unscript my screen here. But one of the plans for this communications plan is to establish a speakers bureau that includes both commissioners, the marketing committee, and other stakeholders, including subject matter experts within the airport, who will come together for a cohesive and codified program to be a speaker. That includes having presentations that are similar across the board. So whether Daniel is presenting or Todd is presenting, then the messaging is consistent to each audience, but also giving those executives and leaders a key message sheets, facts, and updated figures. So wherever you are, whether a constituent stops you on the street, you're able to provide the most consistent and accurate information about the airport. So we do think that the commissioners and those here in the room have a role to play in making sure that their community knows the value of the airport. And there are plans in this plans in place for you to be trained and given the tools you need to help make sure we're giving the right information.
Okay, well, I think it's important to keep elected officials and appointed officials as the commissioners involved, because we're involved in many of the aspects of life in Palm Springs and the other Coachella Valley cities that are represented on the commission. And, I think we're a good conduit for that public relations as well. So I'm glad to hear that there's a specific role for the commissioners to play. And let's not forget the city council either. I think they need to play an important role as well.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm trying very hard to stop sharing my screen and I don't see it happening.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So the number for advertising, I think, is somewhere around 300,000, maybe 295 or something. Have you looked at a larger number? And can you tell us if the airport were to spend, let's just say $400,000 on advertising, what would be the incremental gain versus sort of this number? And I just, I come to this from the perspective that I question whether this is enough, not like, oh, this is too big. But, those kinds of, gut instincts don't really matter. It's what is the, what does 300,000 get us? It's not really clear. And what would an incremental spend deliver in terms of, better communication or more uptake of flights or whatever the case may be?
It's a very good question. And I think we went with this number for two reasons. And one was that it was approved in the fiscal budget and we wanted to work with the real numbers that we have. But two, it's also to set a baseline for understanding which tactics are going to be most successful in your market. Again, which you can double down on, and maybe next year you spend twice as much with video and OT over the top communications as opposed to anything in print. Or you increase the amount of money you're spending in Spanish markets. Having that initial year to discover what works, what doesn't, and then being able to refine it or add more money to it next year, we think is important. But sticking with what was approved in the fiscal budget was top line priority for us for this first year.
So this is a 9-month budget, basically, because the fiscal year started in July. So July, August, September. So can we think of this as what you recommend spending in 9 months, and that possibly a 12-month budget would be bigger than that if it were annualized to 12 months?
Yes, we did for this specific plan start in July and show the actual, the budgeted plans for July and August and September. So we used the entire year's allotment at going through the build, but we didn't have actuals in here for July or August. So yes, when we get to the next fiscal year, hopefully the opportunity to refine, augment, and build upon successes we'll be able to do before the next budget cycle.
Okay, one last question. How much-
David,
how much-
David, allow me to add to Katie's response on that particular aspect as well.
Sure.
Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, but Daniel anticipated the fact that the communications plan would not be ready for several months into the fiscal year. And so the budget was approved July 1st. And so that did not prevent Daniel, and he has been marketing and advertising through the summer. And so I believe the spend that he's done is consistent with the plan's overall proposal. So we have not shrunk it down to say 9 months. It truly is a 12-month because Daniel has not stopped or waited for the plan. Instead, he's been pressing forward to try to promote the airport during the summer into the fall.
Yeah.
That this was going to be late in coming. Daniel, anything you want to add?
No, that's correct, Ulysses.
That was my question, actually. Thank you. But can you just give a specific number of what we've spent on advertising from July through September, just so we have an idea of what the balance is?
Oh yeah, off the top of my head, between $35,000 and $42,000 so far.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
That's all.
I would just like to make a general comment, and I am very, very pleased to see that we have this budget because looking in the past, it was truly paltry. And we were always pushing to get this increase. We finally have done, I think we are right now, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, about $500,000 for the marketing program.
Yeah, the overall division budget is $600,000. $300,000 is allotted basically for advertising, and then we have other ones in there for graphic design, consulting fees, rebranding, redoing the website to match, buying promotional items for events, funds for sponsorship, like for Palm Springs Pride this year, and various other aspects. We really got a really well-rounded budget to really implement a really full comprehensive marketing strategy.
Yeah, I would just like to remind all the commissioners where we were just 2 years ago. And I think we're making great progress. And I'm sure with Daniel there, we can all agree that with David, we are going to push for a bigger budget in the future. Thank you.
I'll take it.
Jen?
John.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I didn't see any mention of revenue. So if I come at the marketing communications plan from a incremental revenue standpoint, what would be your response to, we're going to be able to make more money in year 2 and year 3 because of the comm plan? How would you address revenue?
That is a very good question. I think that in general, launching a lot of these communications efforts take an initial investment and some time to build out successfully. Ultimately, our goal in communicating with the region as a whole is to get more butts in seats, is to get more people on the plane, is to get them aware of the offerings that you have. But we haven't tied any specific element of the plan to a revenue percentage as yet.
Would you consider, and I guess this is to yourself and Daniel and Ulysses, would you consider as part of the communications plan trying to assess the size of the market of people that are now making a decision to go to Ontario and John Wayne, just picking 2 out of the universe, and convince them that you don't know the new Palm Springs International Airport, and if they did, they would now fly out of PSP. So it's trying to size that market that does have the ability to choose and just don't know that we have this great airport with these options. Is that a market sizing that you guys could consider in the marketing plan?
Yes, definitely. That audience, the resident non-users, or the ones who think you are too expensive and you only fly to 4 places and they're never going to use you, it's cheaper to fly to Ontario or drive to Ontario. This is a key demographic for our strategic marketing plan, and we do plan to address these audiences directly. One of the things we'll be doing is setting baseline surveys, so understanding generally in the market who feels the value to drive, putting out our communications initiatives, and then remeasuring again with those same sort of community surveys as to how sentiment has changed over 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years. Daniel also has some clever tools at his disposal that look at actual consumers who are booking. I know he's had some great success in specific zip codes in Riverside, and a chance to point to some successful case studies where you can see specifically that marketing has turned heads and has changed people's behaviors. And we hope to continue to build on the success that he's already started, reaching some of those peripheral markets who do have that choice and are now choosing Palm Springs.
Great. And then last question, ASQ from ACI World. Daniel, are you aware of the ASQ personas, Katie, and are those things that you guys would use to bucket the various customer segments that would be using PSV?
It's possible. ASQ, I believe, is an additional cost that we hadn't built into this program. Something Air Service Quarterly, I believe, but they do a standard across the board measuring over all airports and customer sentiment and in-person passenger intercept surveys. That is a program that the airport could choose to participate in, but if we're able to get measurement of the community as opposed to those who are already in the airport and choosing to use the airport, we found that that might be more valuable in figuring out where our marketing dollars should go.
Correct, and I would agree with you. I'm not proposing ASQ as a service that you'd purchase, just the personas as a standard across multiple airports. So you could use that standard persona and do like for like comparisons.
I think that's a really interesting idea. That would give us a national baseline to figure out the characteristics of our community and making sure that our messaging is reaching them appropriately.
Yeah, I'll go offline through Nadia. Thank you. Thank you very much.
John.
Do we have any other questions for Katie?
I have one question for Daniel. Daniel, would you agree with me that leakage to Ontario has probably shrunk quite a bit with the arrival of Southwest here?
Oh, 100%. 100%. One of the data tools that Katie was talking about, I can pull in and look at it. And, we know obviously with our passengers we're doing and Southwest being here, I know we're definitely getting a lot more local traffic. The data tools that we have, I can see it uses information from our mobile phones, all the big brother stuff. And I can go in and look back historically in 2018, 2017, 2019, and areas like Hemet, Menifee, Beaumont, Riverside areas, and can draw like basically polygons on the areas and see like how many people visited our airport from that particular area in a certain time period and compare to what is today. And so there's areas, especially over kind of an inland empire in that kind of contested area where people have a choice of us or Ontario, say Orange County. And I can actually see that our areas we've already targeted with advertising, we're already pulling even more people in from there. In some cases, some of the areas we've increased traffic pulls by anywhere from 40 to 50%, which has been excellent. So I'm very happy to see some of that.
Wonderful. Any other questions for Katie or Daniel on the marketing plan? Katie, thank you so much. It's great to hear from you and spend some time. We appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Thank you.
Fun working with you.
Great. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the Executive Director Report. And Ulysses, I will turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you very much. And I want to turn it over to Daniel to continue on with the marketing and air service development side of the house. So Daniel.
All right, 1 second, we get everything ready to go. Okay. You guys seeing the correct screen or is it the presenter screen? Correct correct one? All right, good. Thank you, John. All right, everyone. So thank you for that, everyone that participated and helped us get that plan together. I'm really excited to have it and start running with it. I think we'll do a lot of great things for our airport and help build, secure more service, get more people coming through our doors. So anyhow, going on back to my normal monthly report you're used to seeing from me. If you guys saw the news, actually we emailed you as well. Flair Airlines announced more additional service from Palm Springs. They haven't yet to even start. They announced Toronto service twice weekly. Will be starting in December. Previously, I reported to you guys that Air Canada was going to return nonstop Toronto service on Halloween of this year. For whatever reason, they have moved that into a February start. I noticed that, and based on previous discussions I'd had with Flair, they did have an interest in Toronto. But of course, as you know, they'd only announced Edmonton and Vancouver at that time. Once I saw that Air Canada had moved that, I reached out to my contact in Flair and brought up the conversation again about to revisit about maybe looking at doing Toronto service to help us get that route, that hole plugged and make sure we had service from that Canadian city. Timing was just perfect. They actually had interest. I reached out to Gary and Scott, the CVB, that availability. We all jumped on a quick call with Flair, went through a few things, made our pitch, got some information to them. That was on a Friday. That very next Monday, my contact, they were having an executive team meeting that following Monday to see what they were going to, or where they're going to fly these several new planes they were taking delivery of in November. And we were happy to announce that they called me on that very next day and said they decided they're going to bring one to Palm Springs and add Toronto in. So it really kind of just worked out to be a kind of like in the right place at the right time, take advantage of those new plane deliveries they have coming in. So we will definitely have Toronto service throughout the holidays instead of having to wait until February. So it'll be great to get some more Canadians back down to our market and going through the doors, the shops and restaurants and their businesses in town. All flights are set to start the week of December 17th. Edmonton and Vancouver on the 17th, Toronto and the following day on the 18th. Originally, Flair was going to start their first route on Halloween Day and had to push that due to some reasons, I think, with government approvals or whatever. I'm not quite sure exactly, but everything will be starting the week of December 17th with Flair Airlines. Next, Sacramento is up and going. That's our double daily service. It's 2 round trips a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening. So it's perfect for anyone needing to make a business trip to the state's capital. We had a nice little ribbon cutting at the gate, had some media presence there, got some good coverage in the media. The CVB brought out some individually wrapped cookies with their logo and Southwest logo and our logo and even little Southwest planes. It was really a lot of fun to have and gave out some swag. It was a really enjoyable time. And going on with some more air service updates, Air Canada is set to return now on November 4th with their Vancouver service. Alaska in November, we're starting San Jose and Austin. Those are 2 new routes. San Jose will be year-round. Austin will be seasonal, less than daily. However, if it does book well, Alaska is open to pushing it to year-round. San Jose will be a daily year-round route. Both start on November 19th. Allegiant has their Des Moines, Nashville, Indianapolis, and Provo set to start the week of November 15th, and Eugene is returning on the 19th. Delta finally came through and got me an answer on Atlanta. I'm happy to report. They are going to return Atlanta service nonstop on December 18th, run it 5 times a week through January 4th, and it'll go down to 4 times a week on the 5th of January through April. That is not for sale yet, but it does publish in their schedule and go online for sale on this coming Saturday. So if you have somebody looking for Atlanta service, please let them know on site to be able to book nonstop right out of Palm Springs. It'll be great. Southwest has their Dallas Love service starting on the 7th of November, Portland on the 20th, and Chicago Midway on November 23rd. United is coming back with LAX, Houston, Bush Intercontinental, and Chicago O'Hare all return on Halloween as well. American started their Chicago service earlier this month, so we've had Chicago pretty much all of October, and then United will be joining them soon. And WestJet is bringing back more of their routes. Edmonton is set to return on November 1st and Winnipeg on November 11th. So with all these new routes coming up and returning and starts, I'm excited to see what our passenger traffic is going to be doing. As you guys know, you've seen the passenger numbers over the last year. We started out in January quite a bit in the hole due to the shutdown, the pandemic. It started coming back. May, we hit 95% of 2019 levels. And every month since May, including September, has been a record passenger month. Each month, June, July, August, and September, their previous records were set in 2019, and now we have beat them in 2021, which is great. We're still down about 30.7% compared to 2019. I don't see us surpassing 2019 numbers simply because we just started so far down earlier this year. However, if our current growth does stick with what it has been, we should be able to pass the 1 million employment mark, fingers crossed, by the end of this year. And so a lot of us are kind of wondering, well, what's going into this? What's causing all this new traffic for us? Obviously, we know Southwest is in town with a lot of new routes. That's bringing a lot of new people, not only people flying in, but also people who would leave the Coachella Valley and drive into LA to fly. So we're starting to retain more and more of our local residents, which is great. Something else I want to talk about that's helping having Southwest, not only Southwest, but also the additional routes from the airlines is driving more competition. The DOT released their Q2 2021 data this month, and I took a look at the average fares, and the average fare on a one-way departure from Palm Springs is down 29% compared to 2018. 2018, an average one-way ticket was $210. Now the average one-way is $149. So on a round trip, you're saving a little over $100 per ticket. So it's definitely making it easier for people to fly PSP. During our research for the marketing and communications plan, we definitely found there were a lot of outdated opinions out there, especially a lot of them, people think we're just way too expensive. So if anybody comes up to you now and says, hey, it's just too expensive to fly Palm Springs, I always book out of Ontario or somewhere else, you can share with them, no, our average, we have more airlines, more competition, and our average fares are coming down. So definitely encourage them to give us a second look the next time they need to fly. Again, and also with those numbers, we do expect to have a strong finish to the year. And the reason I'm saying that is simply based on our scheduled departing seats. As reported last month, October, we have a little over 41% more available seats in October this year than 2019, almost 16% more in November, and then 22% more scheduled departing seats in December this year as compared to 2019. So I definitely think we're going to have a strong finish to the year. I'll definitely get an advertising out there. If you guys are hearing, listening on the radio, we're getting holiday ads are going on KGA. We're going to be doing on 106.9 The Eagle, 94.3 KNWS, then 100.5 KPSI as well. Also working with KOLA in the Inland Empire, working on securing a traffic drive time sponsorship to advertise our airport to those in the Inland Empire that definitely have a choice, and encourage them to check out Palm Springs. We also have our digital ads and everything extending into the Inland Empire and all over the Coachella Valley and High Desert. So we can take all these additional seats and flights we have and fill them up. Some other things we've been up to is our community engagement. I mentioned before at the airport, we are participating in Palm Springs Pride for the very first time this year. I'm very excited about that. Sunday, November 7th, the parade starts at 10 a.m. Anybody that's walking with us, that's report at 9:30 a.m. We have 15 volunteers right now, looking for about 5 more to join. So if anybody on the commission would like to join and walk with us in the parade, please let me know. You can be about 9:30. Everything should be done by noonish or so. We're all going to have PSP, the Fly PSP rainbow logo t-shirts for everybody to wear. We're going to have Fly PSP swag like sunglasses and drawstring bags to hand out. I chose those 2 things because sunglasses people will wear. They'll have our website, flypsp.com, will be on the side. And the drawstring bags, people will be getting a lot of things handed to them. They need somebody to carry them in. They'll put them in the bag. They would double as a backpack. They'll be wearing it, and you'll see our Fly PSP logo on everybody's back all around the festival. So those 2 of those things we'll be handing out. We're also going to have one of the airport's brand new airport rescue and firefighting trucks as our float to walk with us. It's big, it's bright, you can't miss it. It has Palm Springs International huge on both sides of it. So it'll be a great visual for those in the parade. Tomorrow I am presenting an update about the airport, the Palm Springs Hospitality Association luncheon, getting out there and spreading the word to the community. And earlier this week, I had the pleasure to sit down with the Rancho Mirage Chamber of Commerce board, give an update on the airport. They were really appreciative of it, and they weren't aware of all the new offerings that we have, and they're considering having me come out to do a presentation to their full membership at one of their meetings, maybe a luncheon or something at some time in the future. And that's all I have for you guys. Does anybody have any kind of questions or comments?
Daniel?
Yes.
Has there been any effect that you can tell on recent troubles that Southwest has had, as we've seen in the newspapers, and about the cancellations and things of that nature?
Yeah, it was actually pretty minimal for us. I think over the weekend, I don't think we had very many canceled flights. I don't remember exactly. Ulysses may know on that. I know that following Monday, we had one cancellation from it. But for us, I know some airports, Vegas got hit pretty hard. It's also a large base for Southwest as well. But it was pretty minimal on us. And as far as I know now, everything's taken care of and there have been no further impacts since.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a question for Ulysses. I mean, this is all amazing stuff, all these flights that are coming back and even incremental new ones. How are we doing with baggage handling staff with the labor shortages that are out there? Are we in good shape with that?
Overall, yes. However, it is taking every one of the ground handling companies, which we have 3 here at the airport, to continue to be aggressive in their scheduling of staff to make sure they're here. They have a very active recruiting program. We did have some challenges this weekend with one of the companies who had basically 13 individuals call out. We think it's to do with negotiations, issues, labor. The airport staff stepped in, helped them by being able to schlep some bags here and there on different occasions during peak periods. Minimal impact, although there was some impact. But overall, we don't see any real impact to this shortage having to do with any real aspect, whether it be baggage handling, customer service, restaurants, although all of the tenants, all of the service providers are continuing recruiting for more employees. They all need more.
Thank you.
My question is, it's not a question, Daniel, also for you, Todd, as chairman of the marketing committee. Daniel, you said something that maybe not everybody noticed. Average fares 29% down at PSP. That is a big deal. That is a big deal because, as you may recall, over the years, that was one of the biggest criticism we've had, that our fares are too high. Everybody had to go to Ontario, LA. So that is a big deal, and I think it needs to be communicated to the public because it's really, really big.
Oh, absolutely. I've already got a plan to be including it in some advertising. I'm working on a press release to announce our September numbers, and we'll be including the decrease in fares and that as well. Hopefully I should be sending that out probably tomorrow morning. But yeah, it's great. Like, even I was kind of curious to wait to see what the numbers are going to be like for this year. Because last year with flights, travel so depressed and flights are a lot of great deals out of there. Even last year, the average one-way ticket out of here in 2020 was $170. And so this year we've still come down even further than that. And I've been looking at other airports in the LA area, like LAX, Ontario, and we're almost like right there neck and neck with them. In some cases, we're actually cheaper than LAX.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Daniel.
No, go ahead.
And I agree, Peter. And as Scott mentioned earlier, part of Katie's plan, one of the great things is sort of this ambassador program, if you will, that's going to really tap the shoulders of all of the commissioners so that we're all speaking the same language, so that when we go out to either any boards that we're on and we give presentations, that's definitely one of the talking points that we all need to make sure that we're using consistently. Because I agree, it's when I heard this message, it was an epiphany to me as well.
I hate to do a lot of talking, but I am anyway. On that point, I happened to do a search today for business class from Palm Springs to London. It was $5,000 cheaper out of PSP than it was out of LAX.
No way.
And if we can use data like that, not necessarily business class, but maybe there must be somebody who compiles this data, and when there's good data, we can push it out.
And those things change, right, David? That can change 10 minutes from now, right? So I think, when we do the broader overall 29% down numbers, those are really important things to share. But I think your anecdotal story is a really very powerful one to share when you can.
I agree with you too. I do. I understand your point.
Yeah, the data I got, it came from the US DOT. So they do a sampling of all tickets sold throughout the United States on all airlines. And so that's where that's pulled from. And so that took all of our tickets for the quarter, and it's definitely coming down. It's great. And so those come out The DOT issues that data on a quarterly basis, and it's usually behind a quarter. So we just got Q2 data, and we won't get Q3 data until we're into Q1 of next year. So it is a little bit behind, but definitely as it's coming in, it's definitely we start including our messaging, and definitely something we should all start pushing out and telling people that we're not as expensive as we used to be.
Daniel, I'm going to ask a dangerous question. Why do you think the costs have come down so significantly?
Oh, easily competition. You know, Southwest coming in with their flights and how many flights they're bringing in, plus the other airlines increasing. Alaska Airlines has been increasing out of here. Delta has increased frequency. United increased frequency. All of it really just kind of it boils down to competition. You know, competition is great for the consumer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. If there's no questions for Daniel, we'll move on to the next presentation. That will be from Patrick Tellerico and an update with the demonstration garden.
Thanks, Ulysses, and good evening, everybody. I just wanted to give you a quick update on where we are with the demonstration garden. We did a competitive bid. We received 4 quotes for the project. We had 2 on the lower end and 2 on the higher end, so that was actually a really nice mix. The 2 on the lower end were really reputable firms, and so we went with the lower bid, and we are initiating a contract with them to do that work. I do have a call into them with a few questions around schedule and plantings and things like that. And so I'll be able to maybe provide you a little bit more detail on schedule and other sorts of things at your next meeting. But for the most part, they came in pretty much right at the budget that we had planned for. So that was good. We did do a check for the plantings, the plants themselves, and we do believe that they should be available. So the other comment from the contractor is that they've got staff and they're ready to go. So as soon as we get the paperwork in place, I think they'll be ready to get stuff in the ground. So anyway, I think that's about it. We will do more signage and other sorts of things as we move forward a little bit further in terms of letting people know what's happening there. And as work begins, certainly we'll have signage around the site, that kind of thing. So that's it for now, I think.
Any questions for
Before you, Patrick?
Go ahead.
May I ask Patrick a question?
Yep.
Just real quick, do you have a time frame when they plan to start?
So they, again, when I asked about the start time frame, it depends a little bit on the paperwork. So when they get their contract paperwork in and then we get it back to them is when we'll be able to start. And again, their response to me when, because I did ask them about delays and, other projects on their schedule, and his response was that they've got people ready to work. And so whenever that paperwork is finalized, they should be ready to go. My goal is to have all that paperwork done by mid-November so that they can get rolling in November, December timeframe.
Okay,
so,
only because it is a critical timeframe weather-wise right now.
Exactly. Okay. So we are up against a time window sandwich. So we need to get the plants in the ground before January, February timeframe so that they have enough time to establish before it gets really hot. And I was clear with them on that. And so he didn't think that was going to be a problem. So we're anxious to have more conversation with them about the details moving forward. So again, as we learn more, we'll certainly keep guests posted.
Thank you.
Hey, if there's no more questions with Patrick, thank you very much. Appreciate the update.
Thanks.
At this point, I'd like to have Harry Barrett, Deputy Director of Operations and Maintenance, give an overview and update on airport operations and our projects. Harry, you're on mute or we can't hear you. Harry, we cannot hear you. Harry, I'm going to ask Victoria to do hers while we try to figure out your technical difficulties with your mic. So at this point, if you can stop sharing your screen and we'll move over to Victoria.
All right. Thumbs up that you can hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Geary. Good evening, Commissioner Burke and members of the commission. I will be presenting the financials ending September 30th. All right. Before I do that, these are some updated photos that we have of the snack and go area that's pre-security and the Buzz by Barfly. The graphics have been installed. They're open, they're up and running. People are able to stop and grab food, grab alcoholic beverages, and we are hoping to actually, Parodies and the airport are exploring the possibility of an in-person social event the first part of November. So keep an eye out for that. All right, so now to review the ending balances for September 30th financials. The customer facility charges increased by about $86,000 when compared to prior period. The passenger facility charges increased by approximately $400,000 for this period. The airport operation and maintenance fund is at 23% of the budgeted $22.5 million, which is on track for this time of year. The revenue has also surpassed the fiscal year 21 and 2019's revenue for the same time of year. Below is the detail of revenue in Fund 415. The top three key revenue generating accounts are lease parking, on airport rental car, and terminal airline space. To compare the year-to-date revenue for fiscal year 22 to 2019, the majority of accounts exceeded 2019's numbers. Fund 416, the airport improvement account, has no change compared to prior period. To note, the airport has not received all of September's revenues, so the current revenue balances are through August. Now to review the expenditures for funds 405 and fund 410. We do not have any change compared to prior periods, so no expenses have hit these funds. Fund 415 is showing the airport operation and maintenance is around 8% of the budgeted $27 million. Payroll expenditures in the amount of approximately $1.1 million have not been posted to the financial system. In the upcoming months, you'll notice a significant increase in expenditures for the delayed payroll posting. The city is still in the process of transitioning to the new financial system, and until the transition completely happens, there could be other expenses that increase the expense totals. Lastly, Fund 416 budget is an estimated number for expenditures as we are transitioning to the new financial system and still recording budget allocations from prior fiscal year. There is an estimated expense of $5.5 million for special capital projects, PSC ticket wing, and federal grants. Slide 7 is an overview of revenue versus expenditures. For the period ending September 30th, the CFC, PFC, and airport O&M had a surplus as revenues exceeded expenditures. This is primarily due to the increased number of passengers. Fund 416 indicates a deficit as expenses exceed revenue, and this is primarily due to a FAA reimbursement that we need to do a request for. Lastly, the airport cash summary showing the restricted and airport O&M unrestricted funds. The cash flow for Fund 405 increased by about $1.2 million compared to the end of August. Fund 410 increased by approximately 208,000. Fund 415's cash flow is significantly high due to the missing payroll entries. And Fund 416's cash flow decreased. Previously, the airport was using airport improvement project funds and passenger facility funds for the ticket wing project. Now we're using cash to start paying our obligations. These numbers are numbers that we're expecting going forward for Fund 416. Slide 9 shows a comparison of the enplaned, deplaned, and total passengers for fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 19. And do you have any questions?
I have one.
Okay.
For the CARES Act fund, is that something that still we're able to use, or is that changed? What is the status of that fund?
So yes, we are still able to use the CARES Act fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a question. Is there a way, Victoria, to do a year-to-date, fiscal year-to-date on the system, or are you wait on the reports, or are you waiting until the new financial system is in?
So I do a year-to-date every time I prepare the financials. We are just transitioning from one system to a new system, and we're not having everything record on there. So we're hoping that within the next couple of months, with the audit ending and getting 100% transitioned over, we'll be able to see a more accurate number of the financials.
Okay, because I think it would help the commission, or at least in my opinion, it would help me understand, how we're doing for the year as opposed to the budgeted for the year. And I know the comparisons against 2019, but it would help to see if we're staying in budget with a year-to-date column at some point, maybe in the future.
I believe we have a year-to-date column. So let me see, let me pull it back up. So if you look at the financials, and it'll tell you fiscal year 22 expenses from July through September. So that'll be reporting for the end of September.
But against budgeted?
Yes, it does show what the budgeted amount is. Yes.
Okay, maybe you can point that out to me. I don't want to take up the commission's time too much. So I can contact you later.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's Ken. I think that the real issue is, well, at least for me, I see what we did for the month, but it doesn't show. I assume that when you do the budget, the original budget, you do a monthly projection of what's to come in, correct?
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see where we are related to that monthly projection. Are we running ahead of that monthly projection, or are we running behind that monthly projection? I think that may be where some of the confusion is coming from.
Okay, thanks for the feedback.
We done with questions for Victoria? And can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. So I am not Ulysses, but I am sitting in a spot right now. Let me see if I can share my screen here. And can everyone see what's on the screen?
Yes.
All right. So I just wanted to discuss very briefly some of the things happening behind the scenes at the airport and the operations and maintenance side, as well as some of our capital projects. One of the things that we are currently working on is an airport janitorial contract. So we do have in-house personnel responsible for our janitorial. However, we are keenly focused on improving that program. And so last meeting when I presented, I discussed a little bit about Optico, a system that we were testing internally to see how we can gauge and better respond to some of the peak hour demands that we have within the airport, as well as improve some of our accounting for inventory and resources. We're still working on within that program and refining that to make sure that it works properly. But along with that, the second phase of this was to introduce a janitorial contract for the airport. And ideally, we're focused on health and safety as well as customer service delivery. We definitely want to improve our image to the public and to the passengers traveling through the airport. So one of the things we're exploring and one of the things that we've sent over to our procurement department was to essentially solicit bids for an overnight contract for janitorial services. So we would have janitors on staff for up to 6,000 labor hours between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. And essentially their entire job would be to get the airport ready for the next day, making sure to dig into those finer points of cleaning that we typically don't get to as much as we'd like to throughout the day. With an additional 3,000 labor hours dedicated to what we would call restroom attendance. And essentially that would be one male, one female, roaming around the airport during our peak hours, and just their entire responsibility would be making sure that our restrooms are clean throughout the day when we have a large bank of arrivals or a large bank of departures. So we sent that over to our procurement department yesterday. They're taking a look at it with intent to bid sometime within the next couple of weeks. We intend to use grant funding. So the Krista and CARES grant funding, draw down on those funds to support this. It's intended to be a temporary measure for the next 3 years while we assess the janitorial program for the airport and see if we need to add staff or do something different in terms of a contract. So it'll be a 3-year contract. We think it'll be around $400,000 a year, but we're looking at that now, and I just wanted to let you all know what that would entail. Also, one of the things we've been working on behind the scenes is procuring an airport operations database. So if you've been paying attention to the city council meetings, the airport was recently approved to contract with AeroCloud Systems. And really the genesis of this has been that historically the airport has not, has done everything pretty much manually in terms of gate scheduling, some of our regulatory requirements to the FAA, inventory processes, work order process, things of that nature. So the idea was to streamline some of that, scale back on the paper and cutting down trees and go to a more IT-based resource that would help us facilitate the processes throughout the airport day to day. The system that we are procuring would focus on 4 key areas, and that's gate management. So right now I have an operations supervisor who spends during peak periods about 30 hours a month in overtime manually scheduling aircraft to gates. We want to reduce that right now. Our Part 139 inspection processes. So we have some regulatory requirements through the FAA, particularly surrounding airport safety and runways, taxiways, lighting, signage, things of that nature. We would like to put that into an IT process versus a paper process. Asset management tracking, and then work order management. We would combine those into essentially one database, and they would collaborate and talk to each other and spit out hopefully a more efficient product for us year over year. We're going out for a 3-year base contract with 2 1-year renewals, and that contract total for 5 years is $148,985.
Inexpensive.
Well, that was on the lower end. There are a lot more expensive products out there. I also want to discuss a little bit about our public parking capacity. So if you flew through the airport about 2 weekends ago, you may have noticed that it was challenging getting a space to park in our paid parking. And that caught us a little bit by surprise because there was nothing significant that changed relative year over year to our passenger counts, i.e. we're 20% above our standard, our 2019 numbers in terms of passenger counts, but comparatively speaking, to our peak month passenger demand, it was relatively insignificant. So we were trying to figure out what that issue was. So that weekend, we had 53 spaces available at one point out of 944 parking spaces. When we looked back, we didn't see anything that was really out of whack, but then it dawned on us that it was a 3-day weekend, that it was a Columbus Day weekend, and that could be one of the drivers for the parking issues. We also looked at the current state of the environment in terms of ground transportation. Do we have a different type of traveler maybe coming through? That was a game day weekend in Las Vegas, so maybe everybody was flocking to Las Vegas that weekend and decided to park at the airport. We looked at a number of issues, but what we really determined was that the 3-day weekend are where we're gonna have to focus our effort. So coming up for Veterans Day, the Veterans Day holidays and similar holidays, we're gonna have to take a look at monitoring our parking a little bit closer just to make sure that we don't have to make any significant changes in terms of busing operations or remote parking or anything like that. So airport operations is keeping an eye on that, but I just wanted to make you all aware, just in case you happened to come in a couple of weeks ago and it was challenging parking, that was what was actually going on. And then finally, capital projects. So earlier this summer, we started a passenger boarding bridge replacement project. So far, we have replaced now 6 of the 8 bridges. We do have 5 of them in service, or 5 of the new bridges in service. The 6th bridge will be in service next week. So we're making significant gains and progress on that. We'll soon be taking Gate 10 and Gate 7 out of service, and those will be replaced. And the latest information I have is that we will be complete by December 22nd. So that's a good month ahead of where we expected it to be. We're really happy with that progress, and we're really happy with the bridges. Are there any questions about anything I've discussed?
Yes.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Is it possible to add signage in the bathrooms where somebody can text to somebody who's monitoring, a text thread for issues that arise? And I'll call you tomorrow to talk to you about some things I saw a couple of weeks ago that were absolutely not what we want in the airport, but I don't want to take the commission's time to review it with them. But on a macro level, is there a means for communicating to staff through
Are we
text?
talking about real-time feedback, so real-time texting, or just the ability?
Yeah, I'm talking about real time when there are issues like stuffed up toilets.
Okay.
And you try to chase down an airport employee and there's none to be found because it's not their job to be running past you when you happen to be there at that time.
No, I totally get it. That's something that Daniel and I actually recently discussed, and we're trying to figure out if there's a mechanism for that. So I'll take that back with Daniel, and we can talk about it tomorrow if you'd like. But I'll sit down with Daniel and Victoria, and we can discuss maybe if there's a methodology for that.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to go back to the janitorial service. Are you talking about 6,000 or 9,000 hours?
It would be a total of 9,000 hours. So 6,000 of that would be overnight labor hours for just resetting the airport each night. The remaining 3,000 hours would be the restroom attendant position responsible during the day for addressing concerns within the restroom. So it would be rotating from restroom to restroom, just making sure that we're maintaining stock and inventory, cleaning up after we have a large bank of arrivals or a large bank of departures, that type of thing.
Yeah, and so that comes out to a little bit over $44 an hour.
Yes, sir.
So how much is actually being paid to the actual worker?
To our workers internally?
I mean, how much is an average custodial person supposed to make or anticipated to make?
So we based our numbers on a $30 per hour pay rate, which is right around what our current staff are getting paid.
Okay. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment on, I think the janitorial services are hugely important. I mean, as you just said, David, and that customer satisfaction, I mean, that's the worst thing you can see at an airport is when that's not taken care of. And so anything you can do, I think you will have the support of the commission to make sure that we have a very high standard there. Another comment regarding the parking that you mentioned, I think maybe the reason for that occurrence was the increased prices of Lyft and Uber that may drive people to all of a sudden, take their own cars to the parking lot, depending on how long they're going to be gone.
Yes, we did take a look at that as well, and we discussed that in depth, actually, that Uber and Lyft could be a problem as well with that.
Wonderful. Do we have any other questions for Harry this evening?
Well, thank you all. I'll give Ulysses his seat back, and you'll have a nice night.
Great. Ulysses, anything else with the executive director report this evening?
Yes, give me a moment just to transition back to my screen so I don't miss my points that I wanted to bring up.
While you're doing that, I just want to thank Daniel, Victoria, Patrick, and Harry for their reports this evening.
Two things. One is we had our rating agency that looked at our PFC-backed bond issue based on the most recent passenger facility charge bond issue. And they changed our rating from A- stable to A- positive. For those of you who are in the finance side of the house, you can probably understand what that means. I am not that savvy. I just know that it is a good step, and it is a good step in the right direction, showing that that the airport is in a better position than it was when it was originally evaluated a little bit more than a year ago. That said, is what we were told was that there's an opportunity in the future for it to go up, but obviously Palm Springs is part of the larger airline and airport industry. So we are tied to them, so to say, as not just an independent evaluation. So if the numbers continue to go in the right direction for Palm Springs and the nation in general, then we should see an additional increase in the rating. So that was a good thing to report back. Another thing is just to go with Daniel's statement, the United States government will allow fully vaccinated foreign travelers, both air and land, to enter the United States starting on November 8th. What that basically means is we think, coupled with Canada's relaxation of their travel restrictions, we should start seeing more Canadian passengers in the upcoming months, and therefore continuing to help us with our passengers and also our visitors into the valley. So both things. The final thing that I wanted to do is I'm going to share my screen here. And I want to share with you our final submittal to the city manager regarding the top priorities for the strategic visioning for the city council. So as a result of last meeting, we submitted on behalf of the airport, as I worked with Chairman Dada and also Vice Chair Cochran, the fact that priority number one here in this area was the development of the in-terminal concessions. Item number two was the development of the car rental facility, moving forth in developing the concept as well as submitting for new CFC alternative rates. And we took advantage of this down here with the 2022 new priorities and areas of focus of encompassing everything that had to do with facilities in submitting the airport expansion and facilities infrastructure improvements. So we snuck in 3 priorities on the form that we submitted to the city council. And I think that pretty much should encompass all of the dialogue that we had last meeting and brings that to the attention of the city council. So With that, that concludes my presentation this evening. Are there any questions on anything? Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Great, thank you. We will go to agenda item number 10, commissioner requests and reports. Turn it over to my fellow commissioners. Anything that you would like to bring up at this time? It's a quiet group. Okay, let's move on to number 11. This is reports of council actions. Just a reminder, we have past city council actions, future council actions in your packet from Nadia. Please make sure you look at that, as well as number 12, our airline activity reports from September and airline scheduled services for November. They are in there as well. I'd like to thank everybody this evening for their time, attention, and for your participation. And with that, could I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.